This is why America is going to be fully discredited when this is all over. America is really showing how inefficient and shitty our fucking system is. You know, I saw conservatives again, more cope-servatism, fucking going out there when the Chinese announced that they were going to meet the Italian demand for ventilators, and the conservatives were like, oh yeah, right, yeah, like you're going to be able to make that many ventilators in that short period of time. Well, the Chinese planners simply put all their factories on alert and put 24/7 shifts in these factories. Are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they're meeting the demand. They're building the ventilators. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is out there tweeting, General Motors said they could build 60,000
He actually ordered
very
them
soon.
to do it.
He finally ordered them to do it.
It's like, why not? Why did
you do it earlier?
This is the other thing. When we understand that governments have powers like that,
yes,
and the only thing keeping them from exercising it is like, frankly, stupid ideology. Like,
yes.
well, there's other things too, but generally speaking, if the people themselves don't believe, the way they sell it to you is with ideology. They have their own plutocratic reasons, right?
Right.
But the way they sell it to you, the way they make it credible to you, is dumb ideology. So finally Donald Trump just said, and fucking hell, Trump is making fucking Cuomo look good. Cuomo goes out there and he's like, we need 40,000 ventilators in the state of New York. How do you do that? I'm trying to do Jackie. I can't do Cuomo. Whatever.
Did you hear it was news just before this started? His brother has coronavirus, the CNN anchor.
Oh, wow. That's, I'm going to do him. I'll do him. That sucks. Let's move on. Right? But
you know what's funny? You're totally right. What they're really mad about right now in the West is, for years we've heard, it's impossible to close the borders. It's impossible to stop this or that. It's impossible to intervene in the economy. It's impossible to afford a check for every American during a recession. And now we see that actually, no, governments can do it. Look at how the governments of Europe were able to shut down, struggling with immigration. What are we going to do with all these immigrants? How the fuck were they able to shut down the border so quickly in Europe? Okay?
And then at the same time, there's this realignment as well where, Italy is importing tons and tons of medical supplies from China. Ireland had a massive shipment of medical supplies the other day. France now had to order masks from China. It's waiting on them. Serbia was hoping for aid from the EU, and the EU basically told them to go fuck themselves. And now they've turned
yes.
Yeah, now they've turned to China, and that's a big realignment because for years, the politicians in Serbia have been trying to bring them closer to the EU, and this has kind of pushed the project back by decades. And I mean, look at Orban suspending democracy in Hungary. But again, it's the joys of the free market system. But where are all these countries turning to now when they need supplies and when they need real aid? It's this realignment to China.
Yeah, NATO and Europe are useless. Imagine you you guys should fucking read about this. The Italians bought hundreds of thousands of surgical masks or whatever N95 masks from Turkey.
Yeah.
And the Turks held the masks at customs. They intercepted the masks on their way to Italy, where the masks are fucking in really short supply. It's an emergency, and their NATO ally not only intercepted the masks, they won't refund their money.
And
that's real cockroach
where did
behavior
these masks
right
end
there.
up? Like,
they're just in customs in Turkey.
Okay, I was going to say, are these the ones that Israel nabbed? So that wouldn't shock me either. But
the Turkish businesses were saying they could build 50 million masks. They could produce 50 million masks.
That's quite a few masks.
Yeah, they could build. they could manufacture it very quickly, and yet 200,000, the Turkish government, and people are saying they're not doing it because they need them. They're doing it because they want to see Europeans die. It's just another fuck you to Europe. And NATO, fuck NATO, okay? Fuck NATO. And Italy should leave NATO because this is how their NATO allies are treating them.
Well, I'm guessing that after this, the dust settles from this, and it will settle. Like, this is not the end of the world, but this is going to, and like, again, the way things happen in the real world there is not some day when everybody all of a sudden changes their mind, goes out in the streets and throws the government off. Even the Russian Revolution did not happen that way. It was a long process from 1905 to 1917. We can go into that. It doesn't matter. And finally, when the Bolsheviks took power, they just killed the people that were in this one government building. They were, and then they
the Winter Palace.
Yeah, they were in the Winter Palace, and okay, now we're just killing everyone here, and now we're taking power, which wasn't any kind of people's revolt at all.
The worst example of that kind of hypocrisy over what's going on is Nigel Farage was tweeting the other day that, oh my God, the UK is going to import all these masks from China. That's right, China. Can you imagine? It's like, well, why do they need to import them from China, Nigel? Right. Because, Britain was the manufacturing capital of the world for a long time. And like as late as the 1980s, like 30% of the British economy was manufacturing, and now it's like under 10%. And it's because of neoliberal policies that he's supported.
Yeah, Farage supports.
But then he'll go on Twitter and he'll try and race bait and do the anti-China thing.
Yeah, and so you always gotta be aware when and look, I'm just gonna take a little bit of a middle position here that I understand.
You don't have to. I don't think we need to qualify what we're saying here. If people listen, the Chinese do eat dogs, and it's disgusting. Okay, I agree.
That's basically.
I don't want Chinese people to control our economies.
Yeah,
but the real enemy is here.
And the point is also though, learn the lessons, because they are doing something right that we're doing wrong. That doesn't mean I want Chinese overlords. It means we need to understand what they're doing right, that we have been doing wrong, and that we have been fooled by shitty ideology from elites who are doing it in their own financial interests, basically like looting our countries. And that's why they don't want to do these sort of large state measures that can increase production and can direct investment to where it needs to go and blah, blah. See, the other thing is, the lid, I think, should be blown off forever. The idea that economies are not directed from the top. Now that's a down. People have also had an in before from pop culture and literature on that in the form of like 1984 and ideas of the government, like a government bureaucrat, like managing exactly how many loaves of bread go on the shelf in the store. It's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about people that direct large amounts of money into industries and investments when they want to. Like, why? And what's funny? Even in people who were taking pictures a couple weeks ago when the stores were out of food in America because of panic buying, which is now slowed down because of self-rationing at stores. Yes. So that's a form of management of resources, right? Like, and they don't do it with everything, but they do it with certain items. Like, you can't buy more than 2 of certain items in the store. Probably buy all the chips you want, but amazingly, no one's really buying chips. The chip aisle is full. Yeah. People aren't stocking up on chips. And you kind of look like an asshole if you go to the grocery store. You just fill your bag with chips, right? You fill your bag with chips. Like, stocking up,
Yeah.
Like, but, So yeah, they're not rationing the chips because no one actually. Go ahead if you want to kill yourself.
Or the soda. The bottled water. The water's gone, but the soda's all there.
That's the amazing thing. Water isn't gone, but it's rationed. So you can't buy more than 2 cases of water or 2 jugs of water.
Where I am, it's gone. But
okay. Well, this was last. It'll be back though, right? And this was last night at the store.
I talked to the people. That at the supermarkets and stuff, and they were telling me like they're just not getting shipments of it. Like the shipments for masks and sanitary things and even bottled water is just being redirected to crisis zones.
So-called. So about that is though there's an uneven thing because everywhere we don't have toilet paper or sanitary wipes or diapers, and that shit is all gone everywhere. But water seems to be okay where I am. Okay in terms of like it's there. Like it was there last night at least. They had bottled water and they did have the jugs. Anyway, I don't know where I was going with. The point I was going with, well, first of all, and then you have an uneven distribution of that because some liberalism does that too, right? It's not the same.
Right.
The point is that the state intervention, it doesn't, like you can do this. And there's the idea that we've been given that this is impossible. Not only is this impossible, it's like bad. Mm-hmm. It's just not true. So we're not talking about how, like, you don't need to manage the loaves of bread on a shelf in a store. The store can do that. You can give directives to the store about, right now it's a crisis, so you don't, but the government doesn't do it. They did it on their own.
Yeah.
But the point is, we're talking about
the other
people
thing is
directing mass amounts of money into industries, and like the Impossible Meat, like I was saying 2 weeks ago.
Oh yeah,
the Impossible Meat was still on the shelves. The whole like, dude, I went to Walmart like 3 weeks ago. That place was picked dry, except for like, you know, toys and video games and shit, and non-essential stuff, like non-food stuff was still there, right? Like clothes and shit was still there. But the food was like slim pickings on the food and other types of supplies like that. But the Impossible Meat, that shit was stocked.
Yeah.
Stocked up.
the other thing about all this is it shows the importance of manufacturing and if you want dominance. I mean, you know, you see it with the way everyone now is turning to China because they need them for the manufacture of these vital supplies. And you see how suddenly unimportant all of these financial sector and service sector jobs are. I mean, if you look at the history of any empire, it's been built on manufacturing. I mean, you know, even if the Spanish in the 16th century is, you know, taking raw materials from the New World and manufacturing, they switched to a finance economy and went into decline. And, you know, what history shows is that once you abandon that and once you shift to a financial economy, there's no way of turning that around, whether it was the Spanish or then the Dutch or, you know, the British post World War II. It's a slow decline, but there's never been a country that's turned it around. And once you lose that manufacturing base, it's hard to recover it. And, you know, it shows the results of this gradual shift to China.
Yeah. And I mean, you talk about UK's dominance in manufacturing. Well, the US was that times 10 at one point. You know, like the U.S.
I mean,
it was.
They're talking the World War II economy. The reason the Allies won the Second World War is American manufacturing.
Allies could not win it now.
They could not win the war if the war were to happen today, which is actually a great,
which would have been a good thing. But that's the thing is that America was and the Civil War too, frankly. The North won the Civil War because of manufacturing in a massive industrial base in the North. So,
well, I mean, that's the main reason that Churchill wanted to destroy Germany before the First World War was they were getting hegemony over Europe through industrial production.
Yeah. That was a big bone that the Allies had to pick. Both the Anglo-Saxon powers in general were very fearful of German manufacturing. Not just in terms of war advantages, but also economic advantages on the global market. And it's so interesting because Germany has somewhat retained its manufacturing capabilities today, but the Anglo-Saxon powers haven't.
Right.
Even though they won the war. I mean, I don't understand, like, why that is. Like, there probably is some explanation for that. But yeah, they've actually given.
Well, it was the growth of neoliberalism in the mid 1970s. I mean, it was a coup by the elite, really. I mean, you look at all this stuff that was pushed. You know, people like Milton Friedman, and you know, this was actually the result of decades long investment by big business. You know, the Business Roundtable was an organization that funded a lot of these think tanks, and you know, eventually it was reflected in politics in the mid 80s. But I mean, you know, the financial elite is to blame for this, and it gets back to the strength of China, which is that the party is always above the oligarchs. You know, there are oligarchs in China and Russia, and they do have great power, but they're always subservient to the party, to the state, or to Putin in Russia. And, you know, if they are doing something that's in conflict with the state, China will clear off the board and bring in people that'll do what they want. So
or they'll shoot
that's
them.
the difference between us and the West. And you know, they do have oligarchs, but at least there's something to direct those oligarchs to behave in the interests of the people. You know.
When's the last time a billionaire or even a millionaire got the death penalty in this country for a crime?
It doesn't happen. Even when they commit like actual like violent crimes and stuff.
In China, they'll just put you to death. Like
so.
When some business, I think, you know, one of my buddies was telling me about this. There was some Chinese factory owner that was skimping on sanitary standards when it came to producing powdered milk for children, for babies. And guess what? The babies got sick and they died. Well, the Chinese government went in there. They put everyone from the CEO to the guy sweeping the floors got the death penalty for that.
Well, this is an example of this. So in Australia, actually, there was this story about a Chinese guy who owned a hospital in Australia and shut it down. What is the Australian state going to do to him? What can they do?
Right.
Like I'm saying, like there's probably some mechanism by which they can force it to open up again. I mean, they should do that, even if there's no that's the other thing. The mechanism is force. I mean, I'm sorry to say, like that's what ultimately the mechanism is, and obviously there's various laws and things like that to keep the government from being, just killing people or whatever. I mean, but the idea that that's a big problem is a liberal idea, right?
Yeah.
The government could just appropriate that hospital and open it back up and send everyone back to work and pay them.
Well. Why
would a Chinese man be owning a private hospital in Australia?
Yeah.
First of all,
why
is that even a thing?
First of all, why are hospitals private? And second of all, why is a foreigner running your hospitals?
That's all things. So it's like, so again, you take the immediate circumstance of the fact that he's Chinese, and maybe the fact that he's Chinese means he's unscrupulous or whatever. And fine, I'm willing to believe that. That's irrelevant, though. What you should be mad at is that there are hospitals in your country owned by Chinese people, or even anybody that's not
anyone who's not part of your people. And the same thing. It's not just because conservatives will not make it about what we're talking about. Conservatives want to make it about Chinese people, and the problem is that in Spain,
right. Yeah. See, they want to make it about the characteristics of Chinese people, and I'm like, look, I have been to Chinatown. I know what those are. Full message fucking received on that. Got it. Now let's move forward. What the fuck are we doing?
And also, why weren't you talking about this 20 years ago? Like, this has been a work in progress that conservatives themselves created.
Go to the 70s and see the ball fanning over Nixon going to China. And like you said, the expectations, because again, they expected, and it actually did work somewhat in the USSR. We talk about Iran. Also worked in the USSR, how they were saying, it was Levi jeans that won the Cold War or whatever. But, there's aspects of that, but whatever. The point is, though, they did expect that opening up China would, open it up economically, would open it up culturally, and once they open it up culturally, that's when they've got you. And I guess the Chinese knew that, and they didn't let it happen.
Although they just locked markets out. Every country that locks markets out is able to avoid the pause. It's just how it works. They have markets to a degree, but they have to be filtered by the government.